Hose is a journalist and a qualified pilot. He saw what he believes to be a flying saucer. The flight from Winnipeg to Vancouver in jet aircraft were fairly high, about 37,000 feet. Coming up in the mountains just about sunset, this unexplained light was, or a disc-shaped object was down in the darkness. So I just happened to have a camera with me, and we took a picture.
In my opinion, I think they were worried that it would panic the public if they knew that someone had vehicles that had this kind of performance way back right after World War II, a period of time. So they started telling lies about it.
Dr. J. Allen Hynek investigated UFOs for the United States Air Force for over 22 years. The most well-known of these investigations was Project Blue Book.
Where media is not
in this 1979 interview, Dr. Hynek revealed why the Air Force changed its public position.
They were strongly guided by the CIA, because the CIA was not concerned so much with UFOs as they were with UFO reports. They were afraid, actually, that if another nation wanted to perpetrate another Pearl Harbor, that if their agents spawned a bunch of false flying saucer stories that might clog the military wires, as actually happened in 1952. So they devised the so-called Robertson panel, of which I was an associate member at the time. A very prestigious panel. I was one of the lower-ranking ones. They had Nobel Prize winners and whatnot on it. But at any rate, they handed down the dictum, which then became sort of the unwritten law of the Air Force: don't rock the boat, play it down, cool it, don't get the public excited.
Well, what is your answer to the people who are sure there are spaceships and they say that you and the Air Force are in cahoots? Well, first of all, this business about being in cahoots is just simply a downright falsehood.
And I know, having been in Blue Book for nearly 20 years, that whenever an interesting case came up, the very last thing in the world they would do is to notify the media. And when the media themselves found out something, the Air Force did its best to play it down. It's called it a balloon, called it a star, called it
balloons, meteors, satellites, aircraft seen with the sun glinting off of them, and birds. Our critics continually charge that the United States Air Force is withholding information from the general public on this subject. This is absolutely untrue.
And there's nothing in the records which would indicate that we have been visited by any advanced civilization.
There's nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide at all.
Good evening. Reports of flying saucers are nothing new.
When it got to the top of the trees, it stopped.
It looked like a round disc.
Residents of the area saw it. The police saw it. Sergeant Newell Schneider of the Sheriff's Office remembered it well enough to draw it.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
The Air Force sent its chief scientific consultant on UFOs, Professor J. Allen Hynek, to check the Michigan sightings.
A little bit of swamp light appears here. It goes out. Another one appears over here. That goes out then. But the illusion, as viewed from a distance, is that the objects have moved back and forth.
The citizens of Michigan didn't buy it and asked then Congressman Gerald Ford to investigate.
Mr. Ford, what about flying saucers? You've had some in Michigan in the past week. Do you really believe in flying saucers? You've called for a congressional investigation.
Dave, we've had several incidents in Michigan in the last week. Incidents that many reliable, good citizens felt were sufficient to justify some action by our government, and not the kind of flippant answer that was given by the Air Force, where they passed it off as a swamp gas.
Now, this is not an attack on the Air Force spokesman or the project spokesman. They are simply following orders to explain away all UFO sightings as quickly as possible when they become public and deny that UFOs really exist.
Scientists were being misled, even as the public was being misled. And to this day, most scientists have no inkling of the serious, hardcore evidence, because now it's all treated like a tabloid subject.
Are you sorry now that you did tell people what you saw? Yes, I am. I'm sorry, because not that it's not the truth, but it's just the idea of the reaction of the people. They think you're a nut.
Tell you the truth, that's just what they figure you are. And I'm not going to take it no more. I don't want nobody down in here. I just leave me alone. And if the thing lands right there by that pump, I'd never say a word.
The choice is we can either call all these people over these years, all of them crazy, or we must say there is a real phenomenon there that is worthy of investigation.
Dr. Alan Hynek, astronomer and former UFO investigator for the Air Force. Reports of UFO sightings continue, so Hynek formed the Center for UFO Studies to provide a place where the reports can be received and studied by scientists. The center gets 3 or 4 UFO sighting reports every day through a toll-free telephone number supplied to police agencies across the country. Astronomer Alan Hendry begins the investigation of each report.
Craft, it had red and green and white lights.
Okay.
But it didn't look like anything I know of.
90% of the unidentified flying objects reported can in fact be explained and identified, usually as stars, planets, or aircraft. But some objects defy explanation, and this is the drawing of one of them, reported by the Colusa, California Police Department. It was seen here at Bill and Linda Pecca's farm on the 9th of October last year. There was a power outage late in the evening, and Bill Pecca went outdoors to investigate.
As I approached this corner, I glanced up and caught this big object in this area.
What he saw was a UFO at about the spot where the helicopter is located. The object was 150 feet in diameter, 20 feet high, silver gray in color. It hovered over Pecca silently.
And I saw these objects hanging down like cable-like fixtures hanging down below it, and as I watched it, these tentacle-like things went up, and these lights came out of this saucer-like thing, and these big lights came on, which was a shaft of lights, 2 of them.
Pecca ran back into his home, where he and his wife watched the UFO fly away. Panicked, frightened, they took their children to the home of a friend, Gail Arant, who also saw the object.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just.
But you had no question that you saw it?
No question whatsoever. It was there. I saw it. It doesn't matter to me if anyone believes me or not. I know what I saw, and Bill too. I mean, it was frightful.
Whatever Bill Pecca and several other Colusa residents insist they saw last October remains unidentified and unexplained, as do these UFOs, seen by people whose testimony would generally be believed in court. But how are we to understand these apparent supernatural manifestations?
What we would tend to call the supernatural is only that part of the natural we don't understand yet. And now a television set to Galileo would have perceived magic, and we must remember that we may be in that same fix here. This phenomenon may be so strange that our present knowledge cannot encompass it.
Ron Miller, ABC News, Colusa, California.